I'm hoping the Big Ten has to modify their system for us.
Probably like getting grade 10 sandpaper rubbed on your face every day.
I mean, we say it all the time, whether, there's two types of turds, you're a sinker or you're a floater, but you're still a turd, right? I
mean, we are about players and players playing the plays and not necessarily the plays.
Welcome to the Varsity Club podcast. My name is Derek Peterson. Joining me this week, back for the second week in a row after a long hiatus, Jacob Padilla. Jacob, hello, how are you?
Must mean it's basketball season finally.
Or that I agreed with so much of what you said last week that I just need to have you on again so that I can agree with you again and make myself look smarter.
Or you just forgot to find a guest this week. And it's like, hey, Jacob, what are you doing?
It was not the last one. I can guarantee you that. I can promise you it was not the last one. Nebraska basketball, men's basketball held an exhibition against Peru State Wednesday night. And that was the first look we got at this brand new Nebraska basketball team. It's Fred Hoiberg version 3.0 or Hoiball version 3.0. No. Okay. No, I'll keep trying. First time fans were in the stands at Pinnacle Bank Arena in over 600 days. So pretty, you want to kind of be measured in what you take away from an exhibition against a team like Peru State, but also, kind of a cool moment to have fans back in the stands, to have Bryce McGowens on the court for the first time in a Nebraska uniform. So there's some things that we can talk about there. So this is going to be a basketball specific podcast. If you guys are interested in a Purdue preview, which Nebraska football plays this weekend, I will direct you towards the I-80 preview podcast with Brandon Bogle, where he has a wonderful breakdown, as he does every week, of Nebraska's opponent. This week it's Purdue. So head on over to that, wherever you listen to podcasts, give him hit the subscribe button, give him a review, and listen to that podcast. Also, Jacob has his own podcast with Damon Benning, the Nebraska Preps post-game show that comes out every week. Listen to that as well. It's really good. Greg Smith has a Straight Up Breakdown podcast. Aaron Sorensen and Sasha Durkin have the Mind Your Own podcast, and that completes the infinity gauntlet of Hail Varsity podcasts for everybody to enjoy. So make sure that you are listening to all of that. Make sure you're subscribed to the website, hailvarsity.com/subscribe, so you can get all the premium content that you want. Jacob, is your basketball stuff going to be behind the paywall? Is it going to be premium this season?
I think it's going to be a mix, kind of like we've done with other sports, where probably a lot of the press conference stuff, I think, might go free. And then some of the more in-depth breakdown, some of the feature type stuff, probably put up behind the paywall. So would definitely be worth your time and money to subscribe.
Well, yeah, I say this not because I work with you and because I have you on this podcast, but I mean it. Jacob is going to provide basketball analysis and coverage at a level that you're just not going to get anywhere else in this market. So, yeah, he's right.
Wait, are you saying that nobody else tracked the entire rotation from start to finish of those games and every lineup in an exhibition game against an NAIA team? I don't know what that says about me, but yeah.
This is the level. No, I love it. He's holding up a notebook that is just, I love it. This is the nuance. This is the esoteric conversations that I want to have with you about basketball. I love it. So we're going to talk basketball. Any big takeaways? Like I said, you don't want to get too carried away. Nebraska won 97-58. They outscored Peru State 58-27 in the second half, closed the game on a 19-3 run. We got our first look at guys like Alonzo Verge, at the McGowens brother, the younger McGowens brother, the Steph Curry lookalike that has invaded Pinnacle Bank Arena. And I'm using that because I don't know how to say his last name, so I'm going to need Jacob's help on that. And then, a couple of other guys that have been added to the team. Jacob, do you have any big takeaways from this, or is this just kind of like, oh, well, it's nice. Let's see what you guys look like against real competition?
First, Keisei Tominaga.
Thank you.
So that's not too difficult there. I guess so. Two main takeaways. One is on the rotation, just kind of what we were talking about here, and the fact that Hoiberg went with 9 guys basically until we got to the second half of the second half, when he started getting a lot of different guys in there. Didn't include Kobe Webster, didn't include Eduardo Andre. And Hoiberg said he's got 11, 12 guys that he feels like he could go out there and play as part of the regular rotation. And narrowing that down was going to be his toughest task this season. And obviously, again, he's still got another exhibition coming up against another high major opponent to continue to experiment in a couple of weeks of practice. But he went with a 9-man rotation, and that saw Wilhelm Breidenbach, the freshman, as the backup 5. We didn't see him play any 4 with that first group. And then Keon Edwards, the transfer from DePaul, is kind of played the backup 4 role for the most part. So he was the guy that we didn't get to see at the pro day. He was sidelined for that event. And he played 5 games, a total of like 14 minutes or something at DePaul, because he was a original 2021 recruit who reclassified and enrolled at DePaul right before the season. So he even said like it was he basically had to go through an entire off season in season at DePaul, and he just never really got on the court. So he was a complete wild card to me. And he goes out there and knocks down all 4 of his threes, looks pretty darn good, scores 12 points, really smooth stroke. And he does give you a little bit of flexibility. He can play the 3 or the 4. Looks like they kind of like him as that backup 4 behind Lat Mayen to maintain the versatility on offense of that group. So, and then obviously you've got all the CJ Wilcher, Trey McGowens, Alonzo Verge Jr., and Keisei Tominaga as kind of the guards. That's rotation there. So that was number one takeaway, just kind of who got the first chance to play and what the rotation looked like. And then the second one would be Alonzo Verge, and just the playmaking ability, the chemistry he apparently already has with Derek Walker. And that's something like when we talked to him during the photo shoot day, that Walker mentioned like how great a chemistry he has, the way that Verge just keeps finding him in the pick and roll within their practices and their open gyms and stuff. And we saw that as soon as he checked in, he found Walker on 4 straight possessions, I believe, for 3 buckets and a trip to the foul line. So right away we saw it in action. And I think that'll be a big part of Nebraska's offense this year, where last year it really wasn't. Delano Banton did some pick and roll stuff and it was pretty good at it, but for the most part, especially feeding the roll man out of the pick and roll, it was way down the list of play types, both in effectiveness and in volume for Nebraska last year when you look at kind of their synergy breakdown. And I think with a playmaker like Verge, that'll kind of allow Walker to be more effective as that roll man and allow that to be a bigger part of Nebraska's offense.
Funny because I've been watching Toronto Raptors, and Delano Banton's been doing some of that stuff with the Raptors. He's got a rotation role early on in his NBA career, which is kind of cool. My dog agrees with me. Let's talk about the rotation thing first, and then we'll get to Verge in a second. So the big interest is Kobe Webster, who, like you said, he played 7 minutes in the exhibition. If he's not part of the 9-man rotation right now, that is certainly interesting, because last year for Nebraska, he appeared in 27 games. He averaged 23 minutes in those 27 games. And in terms of shots per 40 minutes, he was second on the team in rotations. And in the rotation, he was second on the team in shots per 30. So he was a guy that was part of not just the rotation, but part of the offense last season. Why would he not be in the rotation this year? What's your take on that?
Well, for one thing, so what he brings to this team at this level, obviously he was an on-ball player at Western Illinois, kind of a high volume guy. Last year, he was much more of an off-ball kind of catch and shoot type of guy. And he shot the ball really well last year. He's over 40% if you take January on, after he kind of adjusted to playing at this level. But he's 6 foot and not necessarily a dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands. Again, much more of a floor spacer than a pure point guard at this level. And so
only 2.2 assists per 40 minutes.
Yeah.
He's not creating.
And you can get out there and you can be reliable enough to get you into the half court sets and make decent decisions with the ball and that kind of stuff. But he's out there mostly to get buckets, to get shots. And he's 6 foot. You got Tominaga coming in with that release and what he's done at the junior college level. He's a little bit bigger. You've got CJ Wilcher, who's 6'5", who they brought in to be a shooter as well. And so that's kind of where the numbers crunch happens, where you've unless you're going at full 10-man rotation and playing all three of those guards off the bench, then it's going to be hard for all three of those guys to have a role. And that was one of my biggest questions going in, because I wondered, all right, who's going to be the odd man out here? And I thought that Nebraska, that Hoiberg would be, it would be in his best interest to stagger Trey McGowens and Alonzo Verge quite a bit. And that's what we saw. One of them was on the court at all times until he went until the last 8 minutes, when he sent Webster in and started getting some of the deeper bench guys in there. So that's what we saw. And if Trey and Alonzo are going to split the point guard duties, and then you can get Tominaga and Welcher as the guards off the bench, or it'll be interesting to see. Kind of, Hoiberg said it was kind of his decision to not start Verge. You wonder kind of what led to that, because he started the second half and obviously changed the game as soon as he got in there. But that'll be interesting to just kind of continue to follow. But you might have better options that bring what Webster does, at least at the start here. We'll kind of see how the season goes, and how, and I think that part of too is Hoiberg had an entire season of seeing Webster. He's only had Tominaga and Welcher in the program for a few months now. So that could be part of it too. In terms, again, Hoiberg said, hey, nothing is locked in at this point. We're still experimenting. We'll see if they have different lineups on Sunday against Colorado, but that could be it as well. So that's going to be, no matter how it shakes out, that's going to be a tough call for him to make this year, because he's got three guys back there coming off that bench that really can shoot the ball.
Verge looks like the main ball handler. Trey McGowens played a little bit of that role last year, but to varying degrees of effectiveness, maybe. 3.3 assists per 40 minutes, 3.2 turnovers per 40 minutes, which is almost dead even, which is not where you want your point guard to be. But in the exhibition, he played 21 minutes. He only took one shot. He had 5 assists to just 1 turnover. What's the next step for his game? Do you think he's going to be more off ball this season with Verge in town, with his brother in town, looking to handle more possessions? What do you think is the next step? Or do you think that he continues to be sort of that primary ball handler, a facilitator type?
I think he's going to do a little bit of both. I think it really looked like in that game that he was trying to run offense, get guys involved, kind of settle everybody down, put them in their spots and all that kind of stuff. You could see just kind of, he was trying to play with patience, trying to kind of see the floor. He wasn't forcing the issue too much. And that, he said he came to Nebraska to learn to develop as a point guard. And we saw it down the stretch last season with Banton struggling. They started to put the ball in his hands a little bit more. And he had 4 or 5 assists in like 4 out of the last 5 games or so. So yeah, I think he had 19 assists down the stretch in the last 5 games. It might've been. So we saw a little bit more from him in that area. I still think he's got to continue to develop if he's going to be that, in terms of his ability to recognize more quickly what's happening, seeing open guys, reading defenses. And he's got to evolve as a scorer as well. And in terms of the decision-making, when and what type of shot to take. He took one shot that didn't actually count because of an offensive foul, where he just kind of tried to force it up through the defender's body, which isn't what you want to see there. And then the one shot he did take was kind of a tough shot around the basket. They didn't have the touch to finish either. So there's a lot of things he needs to polish up there to continue stepping into more of that lead playmaker role, but they're going to give him opportunities. And whether it's alongside Verge or again, running the show when Verge is on the bench. And I think you can have a mix there too, where I think there's one possession where Verge kind of drove and kicked it to McGowens, who immediately drove right back in. And that's kind of what you're looking to have when you've got multiple playmakers out there, where you can attack from one side, move the ball, then attack right away as the defense is shifting and trying to adjust. So I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see them kind of splitting those ball handling duties. I know Bryce McGowens ran a few pick and rolls and had a couple of nice plays for others, even though he couldn't get his own shot to fall very much. So I think we're going to continue to see kind of them splitting the ball handling duties throughout the game, and just kind of what McGowens is doing with Trey. That will depend on who he's sharing the court with.
So this exhibition game was perfect in that a big piece of Bryce McGowan's excitement was that he is a 3-level scorer who is just a bucket. He can get his shot. He goes 2 for 8, 0 for 4 from beyond the 3-point line. Alonzo Verge comes in, and he was the highlight factory of the night. At Arizona State, he was a career 41% shooter from the field, 31% shooter from 3. He goes 7 for 10, 2 for 2 from beyond the 3-point line. He scores 20 points in 21 minutes. So with Verge specifically, because I think Fred has been telling everyone, hey, it's going to take Bryce McGowens time for him to get comfortable with this kind of game. But with Verge, what are you going to get? What do you think we're going to get from this guy? 20 points in 21 minutes and really good shooting, or is it more likely that he's still kind of the shooter that he was at Arizona State? Where do you expect the improvement to be?
Well, it wasn't just the 20 points he scored. He also assisted 20 points.
Yeah, he had 8 assists as well.
He created 40, and that doesn't even include getting a couple of guys to the foul line. He had 40 points on 38 possessions in 21 minutes. Dude made plays when he was out there almost every single time he touched the ball. And I think that's what they're going to rely on him to do. He's going to be the guy with the ball in his hands a lot. He's going to be running a lot of those pick and rolls. For the most part, I thought his decision-making was pretty solid. There was one pull up, his second stint back in the game. He was awesome in the first stint. And then the second stint came back in. And outside of one charge where he got the ball out of his hands a little bit late, trying to kick to the corner as the guy helped in. That was his only turnover in the first half. And then he came back in the first possession, first time he touched the ball, pull up or step back jumper from the elbow with 19 on the shot clock that he did not make. That's the kind of shot that they don't need him taking. And that we know that Fred Hoiberg really doesn't want to see. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the blend that he talked about of you don't want to inhibit guys' instincts, but you also want to continue to stress the importance of what you're trying to do and what a good and a bad shot is for this team. And then the first 3 probably wasn't a great look either. In transition, kind of pull up, but he knocked it down. And the second one was off a skip pass, catch and shoot, wide open from the corner. That was a really good look. So there was 2 or 3 plays that I thought, there's kind of the old Alonzo Verge that you're wondering, is this going to be a 39.1% shooter like he was last year at Arizona State, which is coincidentally the exact same thing that Trey McGowens shot last year. But he for, again, the competition level notwithstanding, I thought he made a lot of good decisions. He made the right plays. He was patient in the pick and roll. He attacked switches. He put the passes on the money outside of 1 or 2. So he had a really solid debut. And if he continues to play like that, just in terms of the mix of past the shot ratio and the kind of shots he was taking for the most part, Nebraska have a chance to be pretty solid this year if that's the guy they're getting. Now we'll see once the defense gets tougher, can he create the same kind of looks? Will he settle into more difficult looks because of he's being defended better? That's what we don't know yet. But I think you have to be pretty excited about what you saw in game 1.
Is this a team with more length and versatility than the ones Fred has had in his previous 2 years?
A little bit. I think we're continuing to add the combination of size and like the mobility and athleticism and ability to play. Bryce at 6'7", that's a long wing there. Mm-hmm. Keon Edwards, about 6'7" or so as well, as kind of a tweener 3-4 combo type of guy, gives you some versatility to play either spot. You can go with Wilhelm Breidenbach at the 4 at 6'10", alongside a Derek Walker or an Eduardo Andre, if you need to. I think he's skilled enough. We'll see kind of how when Nebraska does match up with some of the bigger front lines. Do they try to match up that way, or do they try to just win with small ball? We'll see. But I definitely think he's got more options, because even a guy like CJ Wilcher at 6'5", kind of a bigger body guard, is a little bit different than just having Kobe Webster as the shooter off the bench. So definitely, I think we'll see how the pieces continue to fit together, but he's got kind of roster that he can play a few different types of lineups depending on what the opponent is throwing at him.
I want to ask you about expectations. So there was, I don't want to call anybody out, but there was a very goofy column written recently by someone who is a staunch Frost defender in the crux of the column was basically asking, why is there not more heat on Fred Hoiberg for underperforming in his first 2 years? There should be expectations right now. So Hoiberg is 14-44 as Nebraska's basketball coach in his first 2 seasons. The Big Ten record is what it is. For one, I think it's absurd to suggest that there aren't expectations on the program. And Fred sort of shadily in a press conference said they did have expectations. I'm curious what Trev Albert's answer to that question would be. But Jacob, I'm going to ask you, where do you think this team should be come season's end? Like what is reasonable to expect from them? What's realistic for them this season?
That's a question that I've really been struggling with. I tried to address it in my column on Wednesday this week, so you can kind of look for longer form thoughts there. But it's really hard to go from back-to-back 7-win last place finishes to making and winning a game in the NCAA tournament, right? But at the same time, you look at this team and the way it's built and who's on it, there's a very good chance that the entire starting 5 is gone next year. Bryce McGowens is already popping up on first round mock drafts. We'll see kind of how his freshman season develops and what he turns into. And Alonzo Verge is definitely gone. He's a super senior. And then you've got the other 3 guys, Trey McGowens, Derek Walker, and Lat Mayen, who are in their 5th year of college. And they've got the opportunity to come back if they want it next year. But 6 years of college is a lot for anybody. And these guys will have their degrees. I mean, Trey has his season to play alongside Bryce this year. Maybe if Bryce comes back for a second year, then we get another year of Trey. But all or most of these guys could be gone next year. I mean, Derek Walker would be 24 if he came back next year. So there's just a lot of questions about, all right, so this is the team now. You've got to be able to capitalize on this in order to continue the trajectory that you want to be on, where you just brought in the best recruiting class in school history, at least since the advent of the recruiting websites. And so what are you able to do with that? How can you build off that? And if you go out and have another stellar finish in the Big Ten, then the questions start to, because last year there were so many reasons for why they finished the way they did. And I think it's disappointing for Hoiberg, the way it kind of went down in the final record. But you also, with all the COVID concerns and the brutal schedule and how good the Big Ten was last year, I think it's understandable. But the question is, that's gone now. All those excuses are gone. This year, this is year 3. This is a roster that you've been building towards. We talked about this for the first time, has the versatility to match up with teams. I think it's for the first time, it's a team that should be, on paper at least, be able to play the way that Hoiberg wants to play and have success doing it. So you've got to figure out, all right, what does success look like for this team, where you're going from last place to the pick to finish 11th, which is a significant improvement from where they've been the last 2 years. But would you be satisfied with that? I don't think most fans would be, and I don't think Hoiberg would be either. So where is that threshold where you clear it and you feel good? I mean, barring the obviously you win an NCAA tournament, you're going to be ecstatic. But anything short of that, where is that level that you would feel would satisfy you as a fan, you as the coach of this team, that would help you feel good about where this program is going forward? Is it an NCAA or NIT bid? Is it making just a postseason, finishing above 500? That's kind of where I settled in. Like, I think that's got to be where you look at, and then anything on top of that is kind of a bonus and would have you ahead of schedule. But if I think answering the mailbag this week, somebody asked, shout out to Matt. I think, was it? No, I don't know. There's a few different people, but I forget now who asked the question. Might have been Brandon. I don't know. Anyway, asked kind of what are you looking at to judge that? And I pointed to like a top 75 KenPom finish, because generally if you're in that range, you're kind of in the mix as a bubble team, NIT team. And Nebraska starting at 80. They finished at 109th last year. They're 160 something the year before. So you finished top 75, top 70 in KenPom this year. I think you feel good about moving forward. So it's kind of, it's that weird spot where you've got to be able to continue the upward trajectory to show that, hey, we can get it done here. But I think it would be unrealistic to expect them to go win a few games in the NCAA tournament, but you also would feel cheated if you bring in this special team in terms of the guys coming back, the talented newcomers that might not be here that long. And if all you get out of it is a 11th place, a 10th place finish in the Big Ten and no postseason, then it kind of leaves you with some questions.
So you mentioned this team can play the way Hoiberg wants to play. If they're going to be good, they're going to be able to play the way Hoiberg wants to play. One of the big issues last year was they just couldn't score the ball efficiently. True shooting percentage. So 347 teams played Division I basketball last year. Nebraska was 273 in true shooting percentage and 293 in offensive rating. So 274 in true shooting percentage, excuse me. I want to be perfectly accurate. They just couldn't score the ball efficiently. So what's the biggest area of improvement for this team, not just individuals, but the team, that will translate to winning basketball, playing the way Fred wants to play, and sort of accomplishing some of the goals that we know that they're setting for themselves?
Putting the ball in the hole. It's that simple. Honestly, you look at the last two teams, and Hoiberg's done a good job. You've had some guys that kind of freelance here and there, and obviously turnovers were an issue last year, but you look at their shot profile, and I think Hoiberg's been happy with the general shot profile of where their distribution of where their shots are coming from. A lot at the rim, a lot of threes. That's the way he wants to play. That's the smart way to play the game these days. And his teams have, for the most part, done that. The decision-making hasn't always been great. That first year, they got blocked a ton. Last year, maybe some of the threes they took weren't the best threes. And again, same thing where some of the shots at the rim were kind of forced. But they had a lot of good looks last year, too, that just wouldn't go in. So you go out and look at that exhibition yesterday, and they shoot 11 for 22 from three. Tominaga 2 for 4, Keon Edwards 3 for 3, Trevor Lakes 2 for 2, who may or may not even be in the rotation at some point this year. Lonzo Verge 2 for 2, which I don't know that you can count on that, but he can at least make them every now and then. Latman 1 for 3, CJ Wilcher 1 for 2. Like, you got a lot of guys that you can rely on to hit shots. And Bryce McGowens went 0 for 4, but a few of those were kind of catch that rim, circle around, and popped out. They were pretty close. And you wouldn't expect him to shoot 0% every game. So they've just got a lot of other guys that should be able to put the ball in the basket at a higher rate this year on those perimeter looks. And if that is the case, then it opens up a lot more stuff inside the arc, where that pick and roll does become a bigger weapon, because now you don't have 2 or 3 defenders in the paint every time Walker's rolling to the rim. And you don't have guys just refusing to respect players on the perimeter. So every drive is contested because defenders helping off and things like that. So now you've got more room for Verge to work. You've got more room for Walker to roll to the rim and finish. And you've got guys that can knock down shots if you get them open looks. So I think that's kind of the biggest difference is these guys compared to kind of last. You brought some guys in that you thought could be shooters, but it didn't quite work out. I think Hoiberg has a higher level of confidence in these guys being able to shoot this year and do it consistently.
And to bring it back full circle, if they can, like you just said, that helps out that 2-man game between Verge and Walker. And so to see them have pretty good chemistry right away in this exhibition game, that's a nice sign. Yeah. Who's the most important player for Nebraska basketball this year?
So I don't want to react to one game, but I'll put it this way. I think Verge is the most important player for the team's floor. Can they consistently compete? Can they be good game in and game out? And that comes down to his decision-making. Is he forcing things? Is he a 39% shooter, or is he what we saw yesterday, where the balance was good between shot and pass? He was taking the right shots for the most part, and they were going in, and he was getting a lot of other guys involved and creating easy offense for his teammates. If that's the case, game in and game out, they'll have a chance to compete. When we look at the floor, I'll put Bryce McGowens as a guy, and he hasn't shown too much. I think he was a little nervous heading into the pro day. He was kind of up and down in that, didn't necessarily flash big time in that setting. And again, last night, he didn't steal the show by any means. But I think as he continues to adjust to the college level, get stronger, kind of figures things out defensively a little bit more, and gets that shot to start falling. He's, I think, the ceiling raiser, whereas I think Verge is a guy that will kind of establish the team's floor. Because you got, I think defensively, Trey McGowens will set the tone, really good on the ball, and we'll see kind of offensively probably be similar to what he was last year, where he's 10-point a game type of guy, 10, 11, somewhere in that range, where he scores but isn't a guy that takes over on that end. You've got Derek Walker, who be a good role player, good finisher. You've got some shooters. I think Bryce is a guy that has a chance to kind of step up and be a consistent plus scorer that you can rely on for some big games, whereas you got a lot of solid pieces that are more consistent and reliable, I think, around him. So that's how I'd answer. I think it's a combination of those two, one for establishing the floor and the other for raising the ceiling.
Bryce just has to get used to those rims in PBA, man. Get used to the rims and it's all over.
Yeah.
Or they will have a Lakers-like adjustment period in which it is maddeningly long and they lose to some of the worst teams in the league. Shout out Thunder.
How about that Carmelo shot, man?
That was wonderful. That was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I'm sure you had flashbacks to his time in OKC.
I did. Yeah, 100%. After watching, and the worst part about his time in OKC was that I was asking for him to get traded to OKC like a year before it happened, and all of my friends back home, I could specifically think of one person that was always like, Derek, please stop talking. Shut up. No, we don't want this. And I was like, I think it might work. I don't know. It could work. It's one of one of those low risk things that you could try to do for a team like Oklahoma City, who's never going to sign that guy in free agency. It might work. It didn't work. So for him to miss that badly, it was nice. Also, it was weird seeing Russ get booed by the Thunder crowd.
Hey, you got to get your boy though. Like, if you don't want them dunking at the end, go get the ball. Like,
yeah. I mean, I understand where Russ was coming from, but at the same time, like, don't get punked by the youngest team in the NBA. Like
that too,
so whatever. I was going to ask you one more question. And then we got sidetracked by Thunder basketball.
Well, that's your fault.
We're coming. When do they play the Suns? Is it soon? Your tweet made it sound like it was soon.
No, I just wanted you and I to be able to today have the bragging rights, because the last day was the showdown of our 4 teams within our NBA channel at Hail Varsity.
Yeah, your Suns beat Steve's Kings.
That did not happen.
Oh, they lost?
Harrison Barnes hit a game winner, a ridiculous 3 at the buzzer.
Harrison Barnes is averaging like 28 points to begin this NBA season, and
like a 27-10 guy this year. It's absurd.
Which is interesting, because one of the things that's been in the league, like one of the trends that basketball analytics people are talking about to start the season, is that offense is down a little bit. The games are more competitive. The games have been really, really fun to watch. And that is, some people are attributing that to some of the rules changes in the offseason. Here's a question that I was going to ask you if we had time. Is there a rule change? Like with the NBA last year, one of the things was like the pump fake and then launching into guys when they're in the air. That was a dumb thing. Everybody kind of rallied behind, we need to get this out of the game. Is there something in college basketball right now that you feel that strongly about, that you think, if you just tweak a rule here, we can get more competitive games. We can get sort of, because basketball has started to trend towards more offense with the way that the defensive rules have been changed. Is there something that you want to see changed in college basketball, Jacob, that would lead to a more enjoyable viewing experience for you personally?
That's tough off the top of my head. I'm sure it'll come to me as I watch a game and something absolutely stupid happens. I really do like the NBA's attempt to get foul baiting out of the game because it's just brutal to watch, and it's not basketball. And because of the way the game, the way it was being called, it was incentivized. Like, you can't necessarily blame them too much because that's the best way to win at this point. So I like, even if it comes with some hiccups where there's some judgment calls where actually, no, that probably should have been a foul, but we thought it might've been something else, so we're not going to call it there. I think it's worth the attempt to at least do what you can to get that out of the game and encourage guys to go try to make a shot. That's ultimately the goal of the game of basketball, is to get the ball in the basket to try to make shots. And too often that wasn't a player's goal going into a possession. So
the next step is to get rid of the take foul in transition when the team turns the ball over and just fouls a guy at midcourt. Yeah, that's the next step. Get rid of that so that we can see transition basketball.
How often does it happen when the offense doesn't even really have numbers? It's just like you got like a 3-on-3 break and you just grab them at half court. It's like, You just don't want to play defense.
Yep.
And yeah, I 100% with you. That is the next thing that needs to change. Honestly, that probably would have been simpler than what the change they did make now. But hopefully there'll be some movement in that regard. But yeah, in terms of college right now, I don't think there's anything off the top of my head that I think, oh, that has to change. But did you have anything in mind?
No, I am curious about your thoughts on the EuroLeague goaltending strategy and whether you want to see that implemented more in American basketball.
Not really. I like the ability to just let the shot go. And if you've got the touch, you can get the ball to roll in, then reward the shooters. I know it's something a lot of people kind of harp on, but it's not one that, like, if it happens, okay, so be it. But it's not necessarily one that I'm like, oh, this has to happen. I'm a huge fan of this. It is kind of what it is to me.
That's fair. I'm not going to ask you for any bold predictions. I will leave that for a column if you want to write it between now and November 9th when Nebraska plays its first official game of the season. But I will ask you for that Western Illinois game. It's November 9th. It's Tuesday at home, 7 p.m. Who will the starting lineup feature for that game?
I think it'll be Verge, McGowens, Mahan, and Walker. That's who I expected it to be last night. And I don't know if somebody showed up late to a meeting or something there with Verge coming off the bench. Hoiberg said that's the decision that I made. I don't really know what that's referring to. It's kind of a weird way to put it. But he sat the first 3:41, came in the bench and completely changed the game. So I think that'll probably be what it is. And I think that lineup will be pretty consistent throughout the year, health granted. I think the question will be, all right, what does the bench look like? How many guys are involved? Do we go through stretches where it is a Kobe Webster stretch where he's playing 3-4 games in a row because you like what he's bringing? Is there an injury to somebody else? Do you go big and play Breidenbach next to Eduardo Andre off the bench? Because Andre looked pretty good. And again, Peru State was outmatched there when he was out there, but he looked pretty good and took advantage of his opportunities. So that's a viable another option at center. You got 3 guys there you could potentially play there. So I think the starting lineup will look will be pretty consistent, and I think that'll be it as long as everybody kind of does what they're supposed to. But the bench, I think, will be the most interesting part for me as the season plays out.
Definitely see how deep the rotation is. Well, Jacob, you have some stuff that you got to do, so you have to go. Before you do, I don't know where you're at in terms of the process of getting this out to the masses, but you have a project that you're working on. So I want to give you the floor here for however long you want to tease it or talk about it, or I guess the floor is yours.
Well, if you enjoyed this conversation, then check back to the Hail Varsity Podcast Network in the near future, because we will be making an addition. We're starting a basketball podcast. It'll be Jacob Bigelow, former Nebraska manager under Tim Miles, and myself, and we'll just chalk it up each week. talking all things Nebraska basketball and kind of whatever else in the hoops world kind of attracts our attention. So hopefully we'll be recording the first episode soon. Hopefully that'll go live before the Colorado exhibition if we can get this knocked out, and then we'll be pretty regular, hopefully, with the show moving forward. So excited. Jacob and I have been talking about this for about 1.5 years, and we're finally making it happen.
Is the name going to be loosely based around the fact that you guys are both named Jacob? Is there going to be a Jacob joke?
Yeah, I tried. We spent a lot of time, and I still don't know that we've totally landed on a name for it that'll be part of the post-production after we get this thing recorded, I think. But I think it'll be tough. We could go that route, but I don't know that that'll be great for searchability and visibility as
true.
the podcast. So yeah, we thought about a few different things. We toyed around with it, but also Jacob is a hard name. Even two of them, it's kind of a hard name to play off of, I
Sure.
think.
Yeah.
So probably not, but yes, it'll be two guys named Jacob.
There's your podcast name right there. Two guys named Jacob. All right, man, you got to go. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Appreciate it. Can't wait for your new one.
Yeah. Thanks.
We'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, keep reading varsity.com. Keep listening to all the podcasts. Be on the lookout for Jacob's new show. Thanks, guys.
A Hurrdat Media Production.